Following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 3, Writing and Presenting. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to consider whether content, style, register, and effects are appropriate to purpose, audience, and context, and adjust where necessary. Learners should be able to sustain their own voice and/or argument with confidence. Just like different types of music or paintings, writing can have different styles. Today we are going to get some ideas about how voice, tone, and register are all ingredients of style. Hi, in this lesson we are going to go into even more detail about the skills that will improve your writing. Remember that writing is one of those abilities that you'll probably need throughout your life, not just to get through school.
I write every single day in my work, and business writing, is not that different to any other form of writing. In fact, the principles are the same as if you're writing a letter to a friend. It's to be clear and direct and unambiguous in what you say. And so for business writing, often people try and put in loads of jargon and make it sound more complicated and sophisticated than it needs to be. Simplicity is the key. Keep it simple and keep it clear. And if you can, keep it short. And that reminds me of a famous quote of someone who once said, "I'm sorry I've written you such a long letter, but I didn't have time to write a short one."
In the last lesson, we introduced the idea that style is created by word choice, tone, and figurative language. We also made the point that style must depend on the audience and intention for the piece of writing. Today we will explore the ideas of tone and voice in more detail and how these elements help in creating a style that is suitable and interesting for each piece of writing that you do. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define tone and voice, choose a tone and voice appropriate to a writing task, identify and describe the tone and voice in a piece of writing. Let's begin by refreshing our memories about the definition of tone. Tone refers to a writer's ability to create an attitude toward the subject matter of a piece of writing. In other words, the tone of a piece of writing has nothing to do with the subject. For example, a horrible experience could be described in a funny way. In this case, the tone would be humorous. Remember that the tone of the writing helps to create the style. To demonstrate how this works, let's see how the same message can be written using different tones.
Dear Mrs. Zwane, please excuse the fact that Tyson doesn't have his maths book this morning. Unfortunately, he left it at his grandmother's house last night. He will collect it straight after school today. Yours sincerely, Nadia Lififi.
Hello, Mrs. Zwane. Oops, Tyson left his maths book at his grand's. He'll pick it up this PM. Sorry about this. Thanks. Nadia.
The first version of the note was quite formal and the tone was very polite. The writer uses the formal letter writing style where she says, "Dear Mrs. Zwane," and finishes with, "Yours sincerely." On the other hand, the second note is quite informal and casual in its tone. It is more conversational. This effect is created by the writer starting with "hello." The writer also starts off with "oops," which is quite chatty and relaxed. Word choice helps create the tone, so grandmother is more formal than gran. Collect is more formal than pick up. And the formal note says straight after school today, while the informal note says this PM. Keep these pointers in mind when trying to determine what tone is appropriate. The tone of a piece of writing will depend on the intended audience. A personal reflection could be humorous, light-hearted, subjective, or emotional, while a topic that asks you to discuss, debate, or argue is more likely to be rational, objective, and serious in tone. The purpose and audience for an essay will also determine how much of your voice will come through. By voice, we don't mean the sounds that come out of your mouth. Instead, we mean the way that your own personality comes through in your writing. Here is a definition. Voice is the writer's personality coming through the words, the sense that a real person is speaking to us who cares about the message. It is the heart and soul of the writing. In the notes we looked at earlier, we could tell something about the writers through the way they had written. The writer of the very formal note wants to be taken seriously. She is nervous about her child getting into trouble and wants to make sure she does things properly. The writer of the informal note seems to be a fun person who does not take things too seriously. So, in both notes, the writer's voices have come through. But when is it appropriate to let your own voice or personality come through? And when should you rather write objectively, where your personality is hidden? A piece of creative writing is much stronger and more interesting with your voice. If you are writing a diary entry, an email to a friend, an SMS to a friend, or a creative essay, then by all means let your personality shine through. On the other hand, you should really keep your voice out of formal writing tasks, such as minutes of a meeting, a newspaper report, and a formal letter of complaint. To show you what I mean, look at this extract from the minutes of a meeting.
All the staff were present except Mrs. Jones, late as usual. The chairman started the meeting by greeting the staff and telling one of his stupid jokes. The first item on the agenda was the annual cocktail party. Boring. Why can't they decide to do something different for a change?
Can you see where the writer's attitudes and feelings come through because of the words chosen? In order to remove the writer's voice and make the tone formal and objective, the minutes of the meeting should look like this.
All the staff were present except Mrs. Jones. The chairman started the meeting by greeting the staff. The first item on the agenda was the annual cocktail party.
Let's listen to some writers read their writing. See if you can get a feeling for the writer's voice or the person behind the words. Also see if you can think of an adjective to describe the tone they have used.
I am 31 years old, a gentleman, a husband, and a father of 2 beautiful girls. I spent my childhood in Krugersdorp, and after a confrontation with my mother about dodging school and carrying golf bags at the local golf course, she was alone bringing me up after my dad died in 1969. I ended up in a boarding school in Zeerust, where I started Standard 7 in 1971. After 4 years, I was back in Krugersdorp because the financial going was getting very tough.
What kind of person do you think the writer is? And how would you describe the tone of what he has written? Let's see what the learners at St. Stithians had to say.
I think this is a funny guy.
He sounds like he's had quite a hard time, but he's still positive.
I can imagine him with his kids, what kind of father he is.
He sounds like he was a bit naughty at school.
We could say that the voice of this piece of writing comes through as honest and mischievous, while the tone is informal and humorous. Now listen to Paul, also talking about himself. See if you can work out what sort of person he is and how his voice comes through in his writing. Also think about how you would describe the tone that has been used.
I was born into an underprivileged nation, the black nation in Sebokeng. I had no choice to be born, but I have a right to live. I grew up in Sebokeng, attending primary and secondary school. Unfortunately, my parents left me and my little brother through an accident. We struggle a lot, mainly because our relatives have withdrawn themselves from us. There are 1,000 friends when things go well, but not one friend in hard times.
I think he is strong. I think he has made himself strong because he had to. You can hear that in his writing.
I like the way he's so direct. He doesn't make things all sweet. You can hear it is true. I think you can get a clue that he is gentle and kind. This is because he says his little brother, not his younger brother. That tells us that he is protective and feels like the strong one for them both.
Well, I describe the tone as being personal, serious, and heartfelt. His voice came through as assertive and quite forceful. These writers really show us something of their personalities by letting their own voices through. They also sustain or keep their voice throughout the piece. In other words, they carry the personality and tone all the way through. Before today's task, here are some words that are useful when you are describing the tone of a piece of writing. Tone can be informal, formal, humorous, serious, personal, subjective, objective, casual, or silly. A good way to check the tone of a piece of writing is to ask yourself, what attitude is the writer trying to communicate to me? Read the following extract and describe the tone that is used and how the author's voice comes through. Please believe me when I tell you that being a teenager in South Africa these days is the best thing and worst thing that could happen to you. On the one hand, we are young and live in a time of freedom and opportunity. We live in a nation where respect for other cultures is a way of life, and we have a constitution that protects our rights. On the other hand, our everyday reality is difficult. We have to watch out all the time for crime and disease. We also have to work hard to take advantage of all the chances that come our way. Join me next time for another lesson where we will look at how you can improve your writing style by paying attention to word choice.